Looking for an alternative to Nightmare on Elm Street, and to boot, it stars Jennifer Rubin from Dream Warriors? Look no further than Bad Dreams. Let's go. Bad Dreams stars Jennifer Rubin, Bruce Abbott, Richard Lynch, and is directed by Andrew Fleming. What's up, guys? Let's do this again. I literally reviewed this movie about a week ago because the way I do it is I batch record. A lot of times I'll do 3 videos, sometimes even 4 at a time on a Sunday. And then I put them in folders on my computer. But every now and then, sometimes I might actually throw a video file from one review into the wrong folder, which is what I did with my Bad Dreams review. And it's one of those situations where I noticed it like immediately after I hit the delete button. I was like, oh God, I think I just deleted the review. And it's a pain, you know, because then you got to go back and you got to re-review it. So this is a patron review for Leo Massa. Immediately I went to my patron page and I messaged him and said, hey man, just wanted to let you know, review's gonna be late. But hey, I still am excited because I watched the movie again. I literally watched it again last night because I'm just that way. Like, I have to get it out of my head. It's like I have 48 hours, you know? And 48 hours after that, then it's almost like I have to watch it again, you know? Because I like to have fresh eyes on it. But yeah, like I said, this is for Leo Massa. If you are of a certain tier on my Patreon page, then you can get a review in your honor. And I'm glad he asked me to review this one. I have the Shout Factory edition. I reviewed Visiting Hours, which is on this double feature, and I've always been curious about Bad Dreams. Didn't know what it was about, just looking at the picture. What could this be? Is it a slasher? What is it? And I'll tell you what it is. It's a good movie, don't get me wrong, but I can already tell why this movie wasn't successful. It's like A Nightmare on Elm Street, and it's very much like A Nightmare on Elm Street, and I wonder if this movie came out before A Nightmare on Elm Street, would it have fared better? But it came out, I believe, in '88, and it even stars Jennifer Rubin, who was in Dream Warriors, and it also involves a group of young people in this like therapy group, in this mental institution, much like Dream Warriors. I mean, this movie is so similar to Dream Warriors. Even the characters are somewhat similar, you know? Even the score is very similar to Dream Warriors. I'll have to look up who did the score for both those movies because it does sound very similar. But I'm not saying this movie's a ripoff at all. No, it's definitely its own thing. So anyway, let's get into a quick plot synopsis to kind of give you the gist of what this movie's about. So there's this cult group called Unity Fields, kind of like like David Koresh and all that stuff. The beginning of the movie, you got Richard Lynch. You might remember him from like Rob Zombie's Halloween. He's a veteran actor, looks so much like Rutger Hauer. It's ridiculous. Reminds me of Rutger Hauer, but he's like this cult leader. And you know, all these followers of his, they hang on his every word. And he basically seduces them into killing themselves. You know, he sets this house on fire. And at the beginning of the movie, you have this like ceremony going up, and one of the followers comes up and he like pours gasoline on her, pours gasoline on himself. And this is like a section in the movie that kind of creeps in from time to time just to kind of give you a little bit more backstory on what this cult was like. But Cynthia is our main character, played by Jennifer Rubin. She survives this, and 13 years later, she comes out of a coma. She's been in a coma for 13 years. So she comes out of this thing and she's very disoriented, and she has to go to these like group therapy sessions, and they're trying to get her to come to terms with what's happened because she still has a strong connection to that group. And the character Harris, played by Richard Lynch, he has this strong hold over her. He is pretty much our Freddy Krueger of this movie, all the way down to like the burned face. You know, it's interesting. This guy and Freddy Krueger were both burned, and then they come back sort of in your dreams. In this situation, it's not really her dream. She's awake when it's happening. She just sees like visions of Harris. And you guessed it, all these young people in this therapy session, they are killed off one by one. But the way they're killed off is through suicide. They are coerced into committing suicide, or it just looks like a suicide in the aftermath. I mean, I guess you could argue that sometimes, you know, even in those Freddy movies, a lot of times it seemed like it was a suicide, even though it wasn't that. But you would literally see like the claw marks on the victims in the Freddy movies. Whereas in this one, there's really no marks unless they committed suicide by an act that would cause some bloodshed. And boy, do they. You know, they get creative with each kill in this movie. So technically it is a slasher. Now going forward, when I talk about older movies like from like the 80s, of course, I'm going to talk about like the kills. So you might consider this like a spoiler type of review. As a matter of fact, it will be a spoiler review because I'm going to talk about the last part too. So going forward, I would highly recommend this movie actually. Bad Dreams. Check it out if you don't want to know anymore, okay? But it's pretty much a slasher. Now, I think Jennifer Rubin is a pretty good actress. You know, I don't think, you know, now we're not dealing with like Meryl Streep here or anything like that, but I think she does a decent job in this movie. There's a lot of scenes where she definitely has to dig into her actor's tool belt, you know, and grab onto those emotions and really project, you know, and it's not an easy thing to do. So she's definitely a trained actress in this, and some of the performance can come off as a little bit discombobulated a little bit, like maybe they wanted to try a different take or something like that. But I still think overall she does a fine job. And you know what? To give her credit, she is the main actress in this movie. She's the main character. She's leading this thing. And that's a lot on your shoulders. You know, she wasn't that in Dream Warriors. She was just a side character. I think I would have preferred that character to be a main character in a movie like this, you know. The scenes were just a lot more fun with her in Dream Warriors. In my dreams, I'm beautiful and bad. I mean, that's irresistible. You're not going to get that in this. But you do have some eccentric characters around her, very memorable characters. You got this like married couple who, funny enough, they have like the sex scene in the movie. It's not really a sex scene though, but you know, in like every slasher movie, especially from the 80s, there was like an intimacy scene. They have the scene and it's kind of weird, but their kill scene I think is the best. You know, the one scene in question where they're making out and everything and they decide to go meet at this fan, this like large turbine fan, you know, for the heating and air conditioning. They commit suicide by just jumping into the fan. Like, out of all the ways you can kill yourself, you're gonna literally jump into a freaking fan? And that whole sequence is probably the most memorable because after they do that, then our main character is running and all of a sudden it starts raining blood because of this couple. And she's like screaming her head off. But then you got this character Lana who like is a mute. She's never like said a word. And then all of a sudden when Cynthia comes to this group, then all of a sudden Lana starts talking, you know, out of nowhere. It's kind of strange. But Lana, oh my God, she really reminded me of my good friend Leela. So shout out to Leela. Me and Leela have been friends forever, quite a few years. But I was like, wow, she really looks like Leela. Which made me happy because Leela's like one of the best friends you could ever possibly imagine. But Elizabeth Daily played Lana, and I knew she looked familiar because she was also in Better Off Dead. You know, she's the singer in Better Off Dead. I've seen Better Off Dead a million times. It's literally like my top 3 favorite comedies, you know, with John Cusack. But she has a standout scene in that movie. I don't think she really amounts to much in this. You know, her kill scene is she drowns. Cynthia sees like this vision of Harris doing this baptism, and he holds her head underwater and she drowns. So that's what you're dealing with a lot of the kills in this movie. Nothing too spectacular, but a few of them really do stand out. You got one of them where the character like jumps out the window, and when she hits the ground, it's kind of funny because it looks like a stiff body, and then the blood just like splats. Now, probably one of the most memorable characters in the group, aside from Cynthia, is Ralph. This is a character that cuts himself, you know. So I think a lot of people could probably relate to this movie because it has, you know, these characters that have their own issues in just a variety of different ways. And this is the guy that cuts himself. And, you know, sadly, there are people out there that do this. This is like the farthest end of the spectrum because he literally has like, it looks like he's got 50 cuts on his body. And the actor, Dean Cameron, he puts a lot into this character. You know, I think it's always fun for an actor to play a person that's like bipolar, you know, or has a mental disorder. It just gives you a lot more to chew on. And Dean Cameron really just sends it home with this role. Because you don't want to play it safe and you don't want to play it light with a role like this. You want to go the other end of the spectrum and just completely go balls out. And that's what he does. And because of that, he has some of the most memorable scenes.
You want cream or sugar?
Now, the main doctor here is Dr. Carmen, played by Bruce Abbott. There's a little bit of like a love connection between him and Cynthia. But he's just very similar to like Dr. Gordon in Dream Warriors, played by Craig Wasson, who I think Craig Wasson's a highly underrated actor. You know, he was just very likable in that role. And that's the way this guy is who plays Carmen. You know, this is a doctor that really cares about his patients. And, you know, he wants to see their progression. And he definitely has a soft spot for Cynthia. But he sees that something's off, something's not right. It seems like the head doctor, his boss, Beresford, isn't really to be trusted. And that ties into the last act where you find out that Beresford literally like mixing up the medications and testing these patients, you know, to see, you know, the effects that these medications will have on them, which this guy's like the definition of freaking pure evil. He doesn't even care about the patients, and he doesn't care if they kill themselves, which is insane. And so Carmen sees this, and then there's a scene where he is literally like ramming this guy up against this wall. He reminded me of Travis Bickle from Taxi Driver. Like, he looks a lot like freaking Robert De Niro in some of the scenes, especially in that scene. But overall, guys, this movie's a lot of fun. I had a blast with it. It plays Sweet Child of Mine in the credits, which was a nice surprise. Like, I didn't see that coming. Like, are they playing Sweet Child of Mine? How did they get the rights? That's insane. They must have paid a dime for that. After watching it twice, because I think in my first review I might have given it a humdrum, but I think I'm actually going to give it a purchase worthy because I found myself enjoyed it even more this second watch, you know? Because I do get really invested in the characters, but I think the thing that brought the movie down was it was just so similar to Nightmare on Elm Street. And behind the scenes, they even wanted to like make a franchise out of this. But just the idea of making movie after movie where all the patients like kill themselves, because that's pretty much what Harris does. And I don't think Harris, even though Richard Lynch is like this iconic actor, I just didn't think he like stood out as much as like Freddy Krueger. Like, he doesn't really even compare to Freddy Krueger, you know? He does have some nice moments, especially when he's got like the burned face, but I just don't think he has that icon status in terms of like horror villains. So anyway, yeah, that's my review. I swear to God I won't delete it this time, Leo. But let me know in the comments your thoughts on Bad Dreams. Looking forward to hearing them. Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day. And on Fridays, we do Free For All Fridays. Follow me at Drumdums on all my socials. Support me on Patreon. Buy me a coffee. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and Drumdum out.